Okay. Good evening, students. And today I will be discussing on the most common, one of the common diseases which is seen in medicine department is or neurology is Guillain-Barré syndrome. It's very frequently asked, maybe even your final year exams, could be a part of a theory, or even the plenty of questions do come in and around this disease, that Guillain-Barré syndrome. Hmm? And so, what is Guillain-Barré syndrome? Can anybody tell me what is Guillain-Barré syndrome? Anything, whatever little sentence you can make. Guillain, see the to conduct the impulse from the CNS to the targets, the peripheral nerves are there. These peripheral nerves are there. These peripheral nerves are covered by Schwann cells like this. Okay, and inside there is a axon. There is a axon. Okay, this is nerve cell. Peripheral nerve is myelinated. Otherwise, it is also called as myelinated nerves. Okay, this is axon. This is myelin, or it is myelin is derived from Schwann cells. So these are the peripheral nerves are there. This is for both for motor and sensory nerves or the periphery. So in Guillain-Barré syndrome, what happens is there could be involvement of this myelination, or there could be involvement of axons. Both can happen. So depending upon how they are involved, they are classified further. I'll be discussing that. So peripheral neuropathy in Guillain-Barré syndrome, it is a usually acute onset. It is acute onset autoimmune polyradicular neuropathy. That means the radicals that come out of the spinal cord. From there, they combine. That is both anterior and dorsal radicals. They combine and form the spinal nerves. Later on, these spinal nerves go and supply the targets. So it could be here involvement, here, anywhere. So this is polyradicular neuropathy. So here this patient, in this cases, there is areflexia. What is reflex? What are deep tendon reflexes and superficial reflexes? You must have studied this. I expect you to answer. What are reflexes? Deep tendon and superficial reflexes. Anybody? You have not heard of reflexes? Suchit? What are deep tendon reflexes?
Yes.
Sukubai? What are deep tendon reflexes?
So which involves the
Me.
Golgi bodies, the Golgi complex,
Huh?
the basically the Golgi
What?
complex present in the muscles. So the Golgi body is present in the
Stretching of
muscles.
the spindles will elicit an arc, and that will form a reflex contraction of the muscle. Yeah, this requires these reflexes, be it superficial reflex or deep tendon reflexes. It requires intact what lower motor neurons, or intact what lower motor neurons. Okay, if upper motor neurons are not there, still DTR can be present. In fact, they are exaggerated. But if the lower motor neuron, what I'm talking about, peripheral neurons, if they are involved, then this DTR will get absent. So, in patients of Guillain-Barré syndrome, it being a disease of lower motor neurons or peripheral nerves, the deep tendon reflexes will be down or absent. Okay, that's what happens here because of that. Paralysis with or without, this Guillain-Barré syndrome, most cases is predominant motor. Sensory system involvement is less here. You should remember that Guillain-Barré syndrome mostly is motor in nature. That is, motor neurons are involved here, but sensory neuron involvement can be there, especially the thick fibers. What are the thick fibers? They are proprioception and kinesthetic stents. These they are thick fibers they can get damaged in Guillain-Barré syndrome. But pain and temperature are less damaged in Guillain-Barré syndrome. I'll come to that. So Guillain-Barré syndrome is a autoimmune polyneuropathy, predominantly motor it is. That's all. Because it is element type, reflexes or DTR has absent here. That is, if you try to elicit knee jerk, ankle jerk, or triceps, biceps, these jerks now, it will be absent or decreased. It will be decreased here. So you should always remember there could be involvement of the sensory system. A sensory system. So one good thing about Guillain-Barré syndrome is 85% of those patients will improve, and 30% of them, of the 100, 30% may require ventilator, and they may succumb due to complication. Not all 30% will succumb. Some patients who go for a prolonged ventilation or who don't get immediate treatment. One good thing now in these modern days, we have got treatment for GB syndrome. There is a good treatment availability. If the patient gets a early treatment properly, there is a chance of improvement, and this will be it will come here. Some patients who don't get delayed treatment, that is if they come after 2 weeks of onset of the disease, then the chances of improvement with the treatment are less. Actually, these patients may improve by themselves or they may not improve at all. So one thing that you should remember is in Guillain-Barré syndrome, treat early, because treatment is a bit expensive. Treatment of Guillain-Barré syndrome, the treatment is IVIG, immunoglobulins, or the plasma paralysis, which we talk about. It is expensive. Because of this, some patients may not receive treatment. Of course, the self-improvement is also there. Could around 60% of the patients, may 50 to 60% of the patients may improve without treatment. Maybe I'm talking about IVIG and plasma paralysis without that also. But if you give this IVIG, that is intravenous immunoglobulins, and plasma paralysis, the chances of improvement increase. And this is only possible if the patient receives it within 2 weeks of onset of symptoms. Okay, I'll discuss later all these things. This is just introduction. So 85% of them will improve and 30% may require ventilator. And if they go on ventilator, that is because of respiratory failure, the chances of dying because of ventilator associated pneumonia and all that things will happen. That's why avoid patient to fall into this trap by treating them urgently. And one thing about Guillain-Barré syndrome is these patients do not have this fever. They don't have fever or constitutional symptoms. They only develop this motor paralysis. The patient, if he comes with paralysis, motor paralysis with fever, don't diagnose Guillain-Barré syndrome in him, because they are usually febrile and they don't have toxicities of this febrile illness. They don't have. If they are there, then it is unlikely to be a case of Guillain-Barré syndrome. You should always know that. GB syndrome patient is having no fever actually. Of course, he can develop fever due to complications of his disease, like he may develop pneumonia due to being bedridden. He might develop urinary tract infection. That is because if you have put a catheter in him, you have put IV line, that can get infected, and these things can cause fever. But directly GB syndrome alone will not induce fever. Iatrogenic issues can cause fever in a patient of GB syndrome, but a GB syndrome patient by himself will not have fever and all that. Loss of pain and temperature sensations are usually mild. I told you this. Pain and temperature are small fibers, thickness, small fibers. They are less involved in GB syndrome patient. But deep tendon reflexes, proprioception, they are more severely affected. So these patients can have ataxia because of this. Proprioception is gone now. And of course, tendon reflex also gone. Proprioception, when it goes, patient can develop sensory ataxia. There is a variant of this. I'll come to that. So these I'm stressing them is here because there are classification follows this proprioception and the ataxia and all that. And bladder involvement is usually transient, only found in severe cases. and the patient has got comes with the retention of a urine, as a predominant feature, then it may not be a patient of GB syndrome. It could be transient maladies or something like that. You have to see that. Okay, and the patients can have autonomic nerve involvement also. Autonomic nerve involvement presents with fluctuations in blood pressure, BP sometimes going up, coming down, and postural hypotension, cardiac arrhythmias. And this autonomic neuropathy is seen in all varieties of cases. If the case is mild, also it can happen. Moderate, severe patients can develop this autonomic neuropathy. Moderate, mild means amount of paralysis that you have seen. Depending upon that, it is mild, moderate, severe. So if these autonomic neuropathy is independent of severity of the paralysis. And in fact, this autonomic neuropathy comes now, it becomes very difficult to treat a patient. Even it becomes very difficult to treat a patient of autonomic neuropathy. Okay. Any doubts here?
No, sir.
Okay, I'll proceed further. Okay. Now, as I told, GB syndrome has further subtypes, depending upon the pathology it is actually. See, in the first one which is mentioned here is demyelination. Second one is motor axonal. The third one is motor sensory axonal. Last one which is given in Miller-Fisher. These are the four types which have been classically described. Okay. So this is fourth. Okay. Now this is the commonest one which you see. Acute inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. AIDP. Because AIDP I am stressing is because there is CIDP also. I'm going to discuss that. So that is chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. So this is now I'm discussing AIDP. Acute inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy is a type of GBS. Here there is a, I told this is a neuron. This myelin sheath is there now. This myelin sheath. This will be destroyed. So this will be destroyed and the conduction will be decreased or blocked because of this. Because impulse will be jumping from nodes of nerve to like this will be jumping. If it is destroyed, the conduction will be conduction will be at fault because of that. Now, and this is seen in adult affected more than the children. 90% of senior cases in this is also most of the patients are AIDP only. 90%. Recovery is good here because the axons are not damaged now. Axons are not damaged. The remyelination is easier. If the basic structure is gone, then renovation becomes reinnervation will become difficult. So as the basic structure is still preserved, this remyelination will become possible, and patients are got a higher chance of recovery, which is very rapid, and they have got anti-GM1 antibodies in less than 50% of the patients. This can be seen. This is electrodiagnosis demyelination. That's what. First attack on squamous cell surface, widespread myelin damage. Yeah, myelin demyelination and macrophage activation. And I have got an image on this. I'll just show this. Yeah, here. See, this is a demyelinating type. This is axonal type. AIDP. This one. See here. These antibodies are attacking the myelin. They are attacking myelin here. So because of that, when they attack myelin, there is a damage to this. So when it is damaged, the macrophages will come there and they will remove all this debris. What is there here and encourage remyelination. So the structure, basic axonal structure is intact here. So the patients will have got a higher chance of recovery. However, if there is a severe damage of demyelination, even secondary axonal degeneration can also happen. That has got a bad prognosis. if there is a secondary axonal demyelination, axonal neuropathy, sorry, not demyelination, secondary axonal neuropathy, if it happens following acute AIDP, then the recovery chances go down. Now, this is a picture with the axonal neuropathy. Here, these are nodes of Renevier here. You can see they are open. These are myelin sheath. In between there is a gap. These will, the antibodies will attack here and damage this. Huh? So due to this, these axonals will get affected. So axonal neuropathy, one good thing about it is it destroys the structure of the neuron only. The chances of recovery comes down because of that. Basic structure is gone here. But this damage happens usually near the myoneural junctions. They rarely happen at this level. Then it happen at the level of myoneural junctions. So because of this courtesy or whatever little bit courtesy of this having damage near to the myoneural junction, the axonal neuropathy, especially pure motor type, has got increased recovery rate compared to motor plus sensory axonal neuropathy. The motor type has got a increased recovery rate. How this happens? See, imagine this MAC is there, it is being damaged here, and this will cause damage to the axons. This is here, the macrophages will come and they fill this gap and protect the axon. Further axons, further damage. That's how the axonal neuropathies manifest. Okay, I was here. So I told you this acute motor neuropathy is children and young adults. It happens. This is more prevalent in China and Mexico. Maybe seasonal and recovery is rapid. That is because it happens affects the near the myoneural junction involvement. Because it's near to the ending of the neuronals, so the recovery is possible. So, but unlike here, the motor sensor axonal neuropathy, mostly adults, uncommon recovery is slow and often incomplete because sensory is there. This is also axonal, this is axonal, but this is motor plus sensory, this is only motor. And the last type is Miller-Fisher syndrome. This is adults and children. There is ophthalmoplegia, ataxia, that is because of loss of proprioception. Because of that, and there is a areflexia also. And one thing is, this is kind of MCQ. Anti-GQ1B antibodies are seen here in more than 90% of the patients. Remember this, in a Miller-Fisher syndrome type of GBS, anti-GQ1B antibodies are seen. This can be an MCQ. That is in more than 90% of the patients. This is axonal or demyelinating. It could be axonal or demyelinating. A few cases resemble AIDP. That's about Miller-Fisher syndrome. Now, other regional variants have also been described in GBS. That is, see, only pure forms, sensory. But usually what I told, in axonal, motor plus sensory or only motor. But there is a form called as pure sensory involvement of GBS, can also be explained. Ophthalmoplegia with the anti-GQ1B, which is a Miller-Fisher syndrome antibody as a part of severe motor sensory GBS. It can, whole body can be there. Usually in Miller-Fisher is, there is a ataxia or reflexia. But severe motor neuron neuropathy is not seen in Miller-Fisher. But it can happen. GBS with a severe bulbar and facial involvement. See, GBS syndrome usually involves the lower limbs and ascents. Usually patient will complain of loss of power in the lower limbs, then trunk, upper limbs, then cranial, that is a bulbar muscles can also be involved. When they involve upper limb and above, the patients may develop respiratory failure. So how the Miller GB syndrome commonly presents is, it involves the legs first here, then the trunk, then the upper limbs, then the it can involve here. Thus, it is a ascending paralysis is a common type. So when this involves like this, the patient, when it is involved only the lower limbs, he will not have respiratory problem. When it ascends here up to the if it crosses the upper limbs, patient may develop respiratory distress and may require hypo or may require ventilator. What type of respiratory failure they develop? Type 1 or type 2? What is type 1 respiratory failure? What about the carbon dioxide? In type 1, it is increased or decreased? Students, in type 1, the carbon dioxide is increased.
Decrease. Decrease.
Hello? Hello?
Sir, it should increase, sir, in type 1.
Yeah, in type 2, it is decreased. Okay. In patients, this type 2 is common example could be ARDS. It will be in fact decreased here with the hypoxia. Oxygen down, CO2 down is a type 2, something you can see in ARDS. Whereas hypoventilation, due to respiratory failure, the carbon dioxide builds up and oxygen comes down. Here in patients of GB syndrome, they develop, there is type 3 and type 4 also. You can, I discussed in these things in when I took respiratory failure. Detail, you can see that. Okay. These patients may develop type 1 respiratory failure because of paralysis of respiratory muscles. Here I was. Okay. And I told you this facial paralysis first without limb involvement. That can also happen. And only autonomic neuropathy can also be there. Only autonomic neuropathy. Patient will come with shock or cardiac arrhythmias, and it can be GB syndrome. These are all rare things, but it can happen. Without paralysis or sensory complaints, only autonomic neuropathy can also be one of the types of GB syndrome. And this GB syndrome is, as I said, autoimmune disease. Autoimmune disease, okay? And this is usually happens after the 1 to 3 weeks after acute infectious diseases. Acute infectious diseases, this can also happen. Okay, so it could be respiratory or gastrointestinal. So the commonest one which has been discussed is Campylobacter jejuni. Then herpes virus, cytomegalovirus, Epstein-Barr virus, HIV, hepatitis C, Zika virus, and Mycoplasma pneumonia. These are common viruses which can cause GB syndrome. There are many viruses have been discussed. Some neurologists are talking about corona also can cause GB syndrome, but that is not be there in a textbook yet. So I can't be dogmatically telling you. Okay, don't tell that right now. Let us see, maybe. But right now, remember these important ones: Campylobacter jejuni, herpes simplex, cytomegalovirus, Epstein-Barr virus, HIV, hepatitis E, Zika virus, Mycoplasma pneumonia. These are common things which can, after 3 weeks of infection, can cause GB syndrome. Okay, and some immunizations also can precipitate GB syndrome. Okay, the immunizations are swine flu, that is older one. Newer one, chances of causing GB syndrome is very less. H1N1 vaccination, chance less, but I think so most of you have taken this vaccine. Have you taken this vaccine? H1N1 and older type of rabies vaccine can also cause GB syndrome. Now we are not using this in India also. We are stopped using older, that is we are using newer vaccines now. These vaccines are like a story. Only H1N1 has got some issues, but rest these things, they are not of that significance now. Okay. Immunopathogenesis in AIDP, that is acute inflammation, that is both cellular and humoral immune mechanisms are involved here. This can be an MCQ. They can ask you GB syndrome, humoral involvement, cellular involvement, both, none, something they can ask. So you should remember AIDP is caused by both cellular and humoral immune mechanisms are involved in causing AIDP type of especially GB syndrome. This table is just there, but anyway, I'll go to little. These are all things which you got to remember, very difficult, but and you only focus on this Miller-Fisher syndrome. This one. This one is important. They can ask them. GQP1B. Okay. Okay. And anyway, these slides will be given to you. You can see those. You can just try to memorize as much as possible from that. And anyway, the chart, the table, I have taken it from Harrison. Pathophysiology of demyelinating forms of GB syndrome. How it happens is axonal connections remain intact. I told you that because the demyelinating type, I told you already. I think so I explained this already. So this is gone, but axons are intact in demyelinating type. Recovery can take place because of that. Structure is intact, recovery is faster. But in severe cases, secondary axon degeneration can happen. That reduces the recovery. Pathophysiology of axonal forms of GB syndrome. Disconnected from the target. I told you because the involvement is at the terminal part. That is near the myoneuronal junctions only. The involvement is there. Just get disconnected here. That's what I written here. And motor cases improve, but motor, sensory, axonal, neuropathy, the chances are improvement are reduced compared to motor. So that is an axonal type. The same diagram I discussed. What are the laboratory features you see in GB syndrome? One important thing you should remember is CSF proteins are increased, but cell count is normal or decreased here. That is a one important finding, which you've seen in GB syndrome. Usually in meningitis and all those things, when you do meningitis, the CSF you take out, you see the raise in protein level, cell count also get increased. Could be neutrophils or lymphocytes. Neutrophils is bacterial, lymphocytes is usually viral. Something like that can happen. That is sign in CSF. So protein increased with cell count increased. Sugar could be down or not down. Bacterial, the sugar is down. Viral, sugar is usually not down. Okay, that is the usual clinical finding in CSF. But in a patient of GB syndrome, the cell count is normal or less, especially after the end of the first week. First week, initial symptoms, little bit of cell count can be more. But by the time the end of second week, the end of the first week, the cell count is still there, then think of something else. It's not with GB syndrome. It will be viral myelitis and all that. So, what is the classical explanation of GB syndrome is protein up, cell count normal in CSF. That is the one thing. Otherwise called as albino cytological dissociation. Okay. Then the treatment. The treatment should be initiated early. It should be treated early. That is, if the patient has got a symptom today, if you treat him within 2 weeks, when the GB syndrome is progressing with these immunoglobulins or the plasmapheresis, the recovery rate increases. But once a disease plateaus, even if you give IV, IZ or plasmapheresis, the chances of recovery are not that much. Okay, so early treatment, aggressive early treatment with intravenous immunoglobulin or plasmapheresis will give benefit. Combining these two has no benefit. Some thought of combining to accelerate the improvement, but the combining IVIG with plasmapheresis has no benefit. This intravenous immunoglobulin is a preferred treatment, although it is a bit expensive compared to plasmapheresis. However, because of ease of administration, all you have to do is 2 grams per kg body weight, push IVIG for 5 days. That is easy to give. Okay, so intravenous immunoglobulin IVIG or plasmapheresis is given as a treatment which should be given early. It is a bit expensive. Treatment could cost around 2 lakhs. Okay, plateau stage comes within. Once a plateau stage comes, giving this expensive treatment may not be that preferable. But however, even after 2 weeks, still the worsening is happening. Then you can give IVIG. I'll come to CIDP. Even after 2 weeks, the worsening, CIDP means chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. I'll come to that later. It is actually up to 9 weeks. So if after 2 weeks there's still worsening going on, then you can still give IVIG if you're not given. So that's about in a brief of Gibber syndrome, acute demyelinating acute. You want to ask any questions, students?
No, sir.
No, sir.
You're fine. Shall I go to CIDP?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
So
sir.
diagnosis is only based on clinical picture or something?
Yeah, the one thing, the clinical picture dominates the diagnosis, as you said. There are findings. If you got a confusion about when you're dealing with the variants of GB syndrome, you will get confusion. Am I dealing with GB syndrome or something else? Of course, as I said, you can take use of CSF findings. You can take use of CSF findings. And if if you're suspecting any structural lesions in the spinal cord, definitely you can look for MRI. You can check if you are suspected. Now only
Is there any sure
not
shot
very
sign
well
or
neuropathy.
sign?
What?
Is there any sure shot sign of GB syndrome, sir? If that is present, then we can say directly it is a GB syndrome.
One point, sure shot single thing is not there in medicine actually, unless you take the good proper history. If you have taken good proper history and augmented with your investigations, then your diagnosis will be more or less accurate. That's one thing. You can think of doing nerve conduction studies. Look for how the nerve conduction studies are there. Then that may show the sign of demyelination or axonal problems. So that you can think, am I dealing with a case of GB syndrome? Because this question only comes when the classical ascending paralysis is not there. If you are dealing with a case of a pure sensory type, you are dealing with a case of other variants, you are dealing with such cases, definitely these augmented investigations become sensible. Okay, you may be asked to do nerve conduction studies. You may have to rule out the possibility of some structural lesions. If you have got only ophthalmoplegia with ataxia, the patient has come now, then you should be thinking in terms of Miller-Fisher syndrome. Never know. Then ophthalmoplegia, why? How? You may think of brain tumor initially. You'll check that, follow it up, do all those things, then diagnose. Like that it is. Got it? But a classical ascending paralysis, probably you need not break your head to diagnose with all the investigations. But variants come, then you will have to dig your brain and try to find out with the more aggressive investigations. Okay. Hello? Am I here audible?
Okay, sir.
So now chronic, as I said, acute inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. It is in contrast to, so this is chronic inflammatory. Now it is in contrast to acute inflammatory. That's it. Here the patient will have a demyelination going chronically. That's all. It could be progressive or it could be exaggeration and remission. Both are possible here. So CIDP could be progressive or worsening, especially, or exaggeration and remissions, especially in young. Okay, young. Here also, like GB syndrome, CSF protein is elevated with the normal cells. And electrodiagnosis suggests of demyelination. In such patients, you require, now you got a CIDP patients, you got to prove that there is a demyelination by doing nerve conduction studies. Nerve conduction studies you have to do to prove that it is a demyelination problem. Gradual over few months or longer. Acute onset, yeah, sometimes the GB syndrome presents acutely, then goes on deteriorating even after 9 weeks, more than 9 weeks, person is still worsening. Then it suggests a CIDP. Weeks as CIDP, okay. And one thing is it is symmetric here, CIDP. But of course, there is a variant where it can be asymmetric. Lewis-Summers syndrome, it can be asymmetric with both sensory and motor involvement. Neuropathy. Demyelinating here. That what you saw in GB syndrome, it is axonal. Acute axonal motor sensory neuropathy it was. Here it is demyelinating sensory and motor. Keep in mind. Just see this. And same thing continued. It, as I told you, the CIDP could be progressive or relapse and remitting, especially younger people. Most motor findings are pure syndrome, sensory ataxia can. Some, see, these patients usually they have a predominant motor findings, sensory can also be there. Some patients can develop this funny thing is tremors. Okay, tremors. And it is a ophthalmoplegia can be there, it is usually external. The pupils are spared, that's what. And death from CIDP is uncommon usually. It's not that bad disease. It responds to treatment with glucocorticoids. So death usually happens due to some other cause. But CIDP alone killing the patient is not that common because not a very serious disease killing the patient. Okay. And when you do biopsy and all that, you'll get a little inflammation. But you can get corneal bulb changes. That is because of demyelination and remyelination happening repeatedly. Recurrent demyelination and remyelination will give this corneal bulb picture. Okay. CIDP responds to glucocorticoids, but GBS doesn't respond to glucocorticoids. You should know that. That's why a patient of a acute GB syndrome giving glucocorticoids may not be that useful. Some doctors still give, but books don't recommend as of it now. But GB syndrome do not give benefit. With GB syndrome, patients glucocorticoids may not give that benefit. But however, why we give some patients cannot afford IVIG you have to give them something that's they receive glucocorticoids most often. But if the patient can afford IVIG or plasmapheresis in a patient with GB syndrome, definitely that is preferred one. But here CIDP patients responds to both IVIG, plasmapheresis and glucocorticoids. All the three can be given. That's about CIDP now. I'll just move to introduction of muscular dystrophies. So, anything you want to ask here, students? Students?
No, sir.
Anything?
No, sir.
So I
Reshma?
have a doubt. In
Yes.
the acute, the inflammatory cells will be neutrophils, and chronic will it be like something like lymphocytes or something, or it's the same, but it's just chronic and acute. Like what I'm asking is, are the inflammatory cells also going to change, sir?
It is autoimmune, not inflammatory, usually.
Autoimmune, yes, sir.
Yeah, it is autoimmune. And the macrophages will come there because of that.
No, sir. I'm saying that the immune autoimmune cells will be different for acute and chronic, sir.
Inflammation, see, there is hardly any inflammation. That's what I told you. You didn't just see that headache. I just said there is a little inflammation, hardly. If you get a lot of inflammation, then think of something else. Inflammation is hardly.
Okay,
You don't get so much of inflammation in CIDP. It is immune mediated reaction.
okay, sir. Yes,
It
sir.
is
I got confused. Yes, sir.
little inflammation.
Thank you, sir.
Clinical assessment of neuromuscular disorders. So how to assess the when you get a case of weakness, you have got a puzzle to solve. The problem is at the muscle, or whether it is neurons, or a peripheral nerves, or a neuromuscular junction. This solving this puzzle comes one important thing. So this puzzle solution you have to do when a patient comes with muscle problems. That is weakness only I'm telling about. So it could be neuromuscular junctions like myasthenia gravis, peripheral neuropathies you have seen diabetic and all that, motor neuron what you have seen just now Gebo syndrome, or ALS. What is ALS? Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It could be that, or muscles could be. It could be what are dystrophies, muscular dystrophies. Many are there. Some congenital diseases, there mitochondrial dystrophy. So many things there. I'll come to that later. So the problem could be the muscle or the motor neurons or peripheral nerves or neuromuscular junction. This puzzle has to be solved. How to solve that? You will have to do some systematic assessment. Okay, for that. If the weakness is predominantly proximal, then it is muscular dystrophies. Muscular dystrophies. Of course, there are some endocrine diseases which can also cause muscular dystrophies apart from neuropathies like diabetes, thyroid can cause neuropathy as well muscular involvement, myopathy, it can cause myopathy as well as neuropathy. Combinations can come, you should remember that. And myopathies are usually proximal. Neuropathy, more often they are distal. Of course, there are proximal neuropathies also, but when you see usual neuropathy, it is distal. Proximal myopathy is usually proximal. And myopathies are usually symmetric. Neuropathies may not be symmetric. And one thing, reflexes are preserved here in myopathies, whereas in neuropathies, they are what? They're not they are lost. Preserved and sensation is intact here. In neuropathies, it could be sensory also could be involved. So if the reflexes are preserved and intact sensation, then think of myopathies. Sometimes, of course, usually they are symmetric. Sometimes it can be asymmetric, say predominantly distal muscle. In some cases are there. There are asymmetric distal myopathies also there. You should just know that. So you got the difference here. Muscular type, proximal, symmetric, reflexes preserved, sensation preserved. That is a sign of muscular. So the muscular weakness could be intermittent or persistent. So intermittent is a disease like myasthenia gravis or periodic paralysis, hypokalemic or hyperkalemic. How many of you know what is periodic paralysis? There is an entity called as, they are all familiar diseases of hypokalemia, of course, especially this hyperkalemic. They can cause familial hyperkalemia, can cause paralysis of the limbs. This can cause a confusion between GB syndrome many times. Many times this differential diagnosis will come because there is a acute weakness. You should check serum potassium. That's why. If you have got a patient of GB syndrome, always check for potassium and confirm the potassium levels are normal. Because if you are thinking of GB syndrome, it can be a patient of periodic hypokalemia. Always check for potassium in a patient of GB syndrome. Okay, this is intermittent weakness can happen because of this. And metabolic energy deficiency, they are all rare. Deficiency in glycolysis because muscles require glucose derived from glycolysis. You want to contract as well to relax. So if the glycolysis is at fault, both contraction and relaxation can be inadequate. I'll come to this. Why this? I'm telling you. Myophosphoradase deficiency can cause us glycolysis enzyme deficiency, and fatty acid utilization, same thing. Yes, palmitoyl transferase CPT deficiency can also cause intermittent muscle weakness and myocardial myopathies. Intermittent causes. Now persistent, as I said, muscular dystrophies, polymyositis, and dermatomyositis. Now, what is myotonia? Can anybody tell me what is myotonia? Students, what is myotonia? Sakshi?
So tonic contractions of the muscles intermittently.
Yeah. Actually, basically, you will put it as difficult to relax only, but the problem is both in contraction as well as in relaxation. It is a prolonged slow contraction and similarly prolonged slow relaxation. Okay. Okay. If the patient, if you ask you to contract, the muscle is slowly contracted, and if you are relaxed, you can neither give it away that easily. So the contraction you will not notice, but difficult in relaxation you can see. Once the patient firmly grasps, he will not able to leave it because he cannot open. That can happen with myotonia. So some people say inability to relax predominantly, but of course there is a problem even with contraction. And this can be elicited by action and by percussion. If you percuss the muscle, it will slowly contract and it will slowly relax. And muscle cramps. What are muscle cramps? Abrupt in onset, short in duration. Most of us have experienced this. Okay. Triggered by voluntary muscle contraction. Abnormal posturing can happen because of the joint, can happen. Not a and muscle cramps you don't get in myopathy, sir. It is a neuron. If the patient complains of muscle cramps, go away from what? Myopathies. Think of neuropathies. This can be tricky MCQ. Always, if somebody says myopathy, muscle cramps, you will end up putting it as a what? Muscle disease. It is a disease of nerve.
Neuropathy.
What? What? Hello?
Yes,
Anything
sir.
you can open here? What? So a patient of muscle cramps, it is a disease of nerve, not a disease of muscle. So thus, muscle cramps can be seen in motor neuron disease, or also called as ALS and all that, radiculopathies and polyneuropathies. Okay, this can be an MCQ, confusing type. Muscle contractions. Let us see. I'm not talking about contractures secondary to the fibrosis. The contractures, I'm not discussing that here. The muscle contracture can happen without the fibrosis. And that is because here the muscles become hard. This is due to energy failure. So there is inadequate energy. So you want to relax a muscle, the ATP has to be burnt. If there is a glycolysis problem, the muscles will go into contraction. Okay. So the relaxation won't happen. The muscle relax contraction develop. Yeah, one good thing is one fantastic thing is because there is no ATP, EMG will be silent here. In probably here in this these contractures here, EMG may not be silent. Here it will be silent because it is a metabolic issue. That is what is EMG? Electromyography it is. Muscle electrical activity they check. That will be silent here. Muscle contraction and muscle stiffness. The muscles become stiff actually secondary to the discharges from the spinal cord. It is not actually a muscle disease. The Stiffman syndrome, it is there. Muscles will become stiff because of these discharges coming from the spinal cord. Contractions will be there of the axial trunk and proximal muscles. So due to this, gait disturbance will be there. superimposed muscle spasms can also be seen. And one thing is this in this type of muscle stiffness, stiff person's syndrome, during sleep, the muscles will get relaxed. Serum antibodies against glutamic acid decarboxylase can be seen here. Okay, another type of muscle stiffness is acquired neuromyotonia or Isaac syndrome. Hyperexcitability of the peripheral nerves. Peripheral nerves are hyperexcitable, mediated by antibodies that are targeted to voltage-gated potassium channels. So these antibodies targeted to voltage-gated potassium channels. Due to this, the muscles, these nerves become hyperexcitable, and in sudden impulse, the muscle goes into stiff because of muscle become stiff. Okay. So muscle contracture, there is energy issue. Muscle stiffness, there is an increased impulse. Muscle cramp is a disease of the nerves only, not a disease of the muscle. Myotonia, there is a delayed relaxation and delayed contraction. And that's it. Okay, these are types of what you see in muscle diseases. These are complaints you can come across. And one more thing, muscle stiffness. Okay, you may see the muscle enlargement and muscle atrophy. In patients of this is what happens in the muscle myopathies. That is dystrophies, muscular dystrophies. The normal muscle is replaced by fat and other connective tissue. Due to this, size may remain normal. So you may not see atrophy or hypertrophy. You may not see, but of course there are sometimes limb, some facioscapulohumeral, you can see atrophies, but predominantly it is not seen. In muscular dystrophies, the muscle size remains normal. But one thing you should remember, in a patient with the limb girdle dystrophy, there is actually true hypertrophy. This can be an MCQ. Limb girdle means the proximal muscles of the trunk, that is of the gluteal muscles and all that, they'll have a dystrophy. Due to this, there is a secondary hypertrophy of the calf muscles, and this is actually a true hypertrophy. Okay, in this case, so this can be an MCQ. So in a limb girdle dystrophy, the calf muscles may truly hypertrophy. It is not pseudo hypertrophy. This can be an MCQ. I will be discussing more about this hereditary neuromuscular disorders in a next class along with MCQs. And testing for myopathies. So as it is a disease of the muscle, CK will be increased here. And one test can be used, forearm exercise test. Check the raise of lactic acid and ammonia from the cubital vein following vigorous opening and closing of hand. So you ask the patient to open and close the hand, put an IV line into the cubital vein and check the blood coming from the hand. You check how what it is. And if there is a raise in a in a patient with the myophosphorus deficiency and certain other glycolytic defects, lactic acid raise is subnormal. Because glycolytic pathway is at fault. Lactic acid raise is subnormal and ammonia raise is adequate. Whereas in this case, myoadenylate deaminase deficiency, ammonia raise is inadequate, but lactic raise is normal. Usually lactic acid increases by 3-fold. And you can go for muscle biopsies. And there are some electrodiagnostic studies in myopathies. Nerve conductions are normal in myopathies. They are normal in myopathies. Whereas electromyograph, EMG and muscle studies, they are maybe abnormal. In a patient with inflammation, when you put a needle, or necrotizing, you get a irritation signs, irritability. Whereas in myopathies, long-standing cases, this irritability may not be seen. What I am doing, EMG may detect, and you may also detect this myotonic delayed action potential with the prolonged action potential. You may see in EMG in patients here. And motor neuron unit. Okay, motor unit action potentials. Motor unit. In myopathies, they fire early but at a normal rate. Whereas in neuropathies, they are at a faster rate. Rate is higher in neuropathies. Motor unit action potentials. These shall I take now or next class? This one, these two charts. They are a bit confusing because I have not discussed the individual this one now. Okay, this what these charts are then unless I tell you the name of the diseases, this becomes very difficult for you to follow these two chart. I'll be discussing this in next class, these two charts. Okay. So if you want to ask me any questions, now let us discuss about that. Students,
Sir,
okay, there are some questions here. Sidhu Halli has asked, what are all cells seen in acute and chronic, sir? Sidhu, he is left. Sidhu Halli, what? I didn't get. What all cells seen in acute and chronic what? CIDP you're talking about. See, there is the inflammation is less. So inflammation is less means we don't usually worry about these inflammatory cells. Usually it is autoimmune disease. It is a autoimmune disease there. So I think the neutrophils will come there. I have not gone through that. I'll find out and tell you people. What are the 3 reasons for persistent muscle weakness, sir? I told you now 3 persistent muscle weaknesses here. They are there. Here. You'll get the slides and the classroom. The 3 reasons. Persistent muscular dystrophy, polymyositis, and dermatomyositis. Then, any doubts? Ascending paralysis may help. Manjunath Gowda, yeah. For a diagnosis of GB syndrome, ascending paralysis is the most commonly seen. Definitely, it will help us. Anything? Any other doubts? Sidhu Huli, did I 3 reasons? Sakshi, did I solve your problem? You asked that one, na?
yes,
I
sir.
will be posting these slides in the classroom there. All actually what are done is CNS. There are 2 group of slides, part 1 and part 2. Both of them are there. All classes as I go on recording, I'll be adding the slides. And you can get all the slides there. Okay. Anything? And how many of your followers have joined the 3rd, 4th year or what do you say? Those new classes which are created? You join them because why I'm asking you to join is these now in one classroom all